Chris Collins is the president and artistic director of the Detroit Jazz Festival, and he now joins us live on the Oakland County Megacast. Chris, thank you for being with us today.
Pleasure's mine, Tyler. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate having you on. How are you, and how's everybody over at the Detroit Jazz Festival doing?
We are cooking. As you know, the Detroit Jazz Fest Foundation is a year-round organization with educational and performance programming. Our signature event, of course, the Detroit Jazz Festival, wrapped up early September with great bravado. Our first broadcast-only Detroit Jazz Festival in 41 years, so it was quite a feat. But everyone knows the reason why.
Yeah, these virtual shows and these virtual festivals are certainly not easy to put on. Neither are the in-person ones, but they're arguably a little more complicated. Trying to get everyone's video and everyone's audio right, keeping everybody in sync, keeping things moving along. How was it different this year for the Detroit Jazz Festival? Was the experience about the same? Was it a little bit different? What were the positives and negatives of the circumstances for which the Detroit Jazz Festival still went on in 2020?
Well, you know, the Detroit Jazz Festival is a 41-year tradition in Detroit, the largest free jazz festival in the world. We attract about over 300,000 people in 4 days every year, about a third of those from outside of the state. So it's a significant piece of the culture and the Detroit legacy, as well as being a part of the Detroit jazz culture. But this year, you know, back in late March, early April, it was clear that there were some things that needed to be reviewed, and some decisions had to be made. I put together a task force within the Festival Foundation, and we began to make relationships with health experts and study the contingency possibilities of doing various versions of the Detroit Jazz Festival. After some time, we did have several files in place that we could use, although ultimately it became necessary to protect our patrons to make it a broadcast-only, non-live audience event. And then as we move forward, there were some uplifts in late June and July, and that caused us to also make some decisions about some of our out-of-town national artists, particularly those in situations where they may be in a high-risk category for the COVID-19. So we looked at, those that were elderly artists, African-American artists, those with secondary conditions, and we restructured the programming. Ultimately, I put in place a broadcast only, and just to be clear, we broadcast on television, radio, and online for a couple of reasons. First is, it was a very high quality broadcast. We didn't want to do just a streaming sort of thing. We wanted to do something that would raise the bar on audio and video quality of an online music festival event. And also, we wanted to make sure it was readily available to everyone, whether they had Wi-Fi or not, because we are a free festival. Part of our mission is to reach everyone. So our battle cry became safe, live, and free. I insisted that all the performances be live, nothing pre-taped. So we ended up with 4 days, a little over 12 hours a day of continuous jazz programming. You can imagine doing 12 hours of live television in 4 different venues throughout 4 days. It was quite an undertaking, but with the help of folks at DPTV and all the infrastructure that we had created with Detroit Jazz Fest Live, our online app, over the last 3.5 years, which included a lot of streaming elements, we were well suited to put this together and had a lot of infrastructure in place. We ended up running, I think it was 2.8 miles of fiber optics. We built 4 custom sound stages at the Marriott in the Rensen, and developed an extremely robust situation for audio, video, and production, and of course safety and isolation of the artists and our crew. In the end, we had over 400 people working on the site, and thanks to all concerned and the very intensive safety protocols based on CDC and state health guidelines, weeks later, we are without a single incident of COVID in the Jazz Festival family. So it was very unique, very well attended. We had, as I said, about 10 media outlets, and the numbers are still coming in, but we were in 32 countries worldwide, nearly 1 million unique viewers, and certainly a wonderful ambassador program for Detroit and an incredible piece of the jazz culture globally this year.
Chris Collins with us on the Oakland County Megacast. He is the president and the artistic director of the Detroit Jazz Festival, which just completed its 41st annual festival, doing that entirely virtually over TV, over radio, over internet streaming, as he mentioned. And Chris, you mentioned all the collaborative efforts, laying all that fiber optic, building customized sound stages at the Renson and at the Marriott as well. How much more this year, with the circumstances that we're under and what had to happen in order to hold the 41st Detroit Jazz Festival, how much more of a community and a team effort did it become this year, and how is that indicative of everything that we're doing in our community and in the world right now to keep our society running?
Well, like everything else, every year, particularly this year, it is very much a team effort, and it's the coming together of many different craftsmen and areas of craft throughout our region. The IATSE Union of Stage Workers, Crews, Lighting, Sound, of course, the incredible artistry that we bring in. It's always a large community effort. In this case, everyone had to pivot and direct their creativity and their wisdom and their craftsmanship at a completely different environment. You know, most festivals around the world, almost all, canceled this year or postponed till next year. And I wasn't boastful at all that we were the only one that survived. It was because we don't rely on tickets, we rely on sponsors and donors, and secondly, we have this robust investment in streaming and video technology already, and that put us in a good position to do it. But I have to really commend the incredible work of the Detroit Jazz Festival Foundation team and all of its all of the vendors that we employ in all the various different craft areas to pull it together, and of course, along with broadcast professionals in production and direction and so on. These were essential. In fact, it was somewhat reflected musically. The opening set of the festival was a piece I called Justice. And originally I was going to just compose it, all four movements of this piece. It was inspired by the words of the great John Lewis. But I decided as we moved forward in the name of community effort and the beauty that can present and the different perspectives that can bring, I ended up doing each movement with a different Detroit ensemble and a different composer. And so in the end, you had all these different perspectives on the subject of justice, a very important subject this year. And it really launched the festival with the sense of exactly what you're talking about. We're all coming together to create a whole. And in fact, the feeling amongst the artists, which you're always tentative when you go from live to streaming or to broadcast, you know, this maintaining the feeling of important performances and on stage, how do you use sound and lighting to create an environment for the artist that really feels special as a performance should. And we tended to all those issues. And I can tell you that the artists who all stayed at the Marriott, the Renaissance, so we created our own jazz bubble there of 400 and some people. It was a feeling of spiritual unity, of community and cultural unity, whether the artists were from Detroit or not. We all came together with a sense that we were doing something for the greater good. We were bringing arts, culture, and jazz, a very important part of the Detroit scene, into our community in a time where it was very much needed and appreciated, at a time when much of that had disappeared from the landscape. And in fact, the day I announced the lineup and we were moving forward with the Detroit Jazz Festival 2020, presented by Rocket Mortgage, by the way, I got a lot of feedback. It was on the same day as the governor proposed the lockdown, and a lot of the media came back and wanted to know why I would propose moving forward with such a huge event. And my answer was simple. My answer was hope. We all need hope. We all need, especially in the entertainment industry right now, an opportunity to look forward to potential employment, which, is a lot of people when it comes to the Detroit Jazz Fest Foundation. So I said, even if we canceled the day before the festival, a lot of people would go to work for the year and we would still find a way to get things done. In this case, things worked out extremely well. And the feeling amongst the workers, the artists, the hotel, everyone was something very, very special. And I think that is something we're all seeking. And I encourage everyone, be creative with what you're doing now and look to the barriers that this situation presents as barriers to be overcome. And in many cases, and in our case as well, we see that the barriers and the methods, the tools we use to overcome them will be things that we will employ in the future in new ways to expand into digital domains, to reach the broader audience of the world beyond those that just make it to Detroit during the Detroit Jazz Festival. And it presents a whole new, beautiful perspective on who we are and how we relate to our community and to the global community as a whole.
Chris Collins with us, the president and artistic director of the Detroit Jazz Festival, which just completed its 41st festival entirely virtually during this COVID-19 pandemic. And Chris, there's a great article in the Detroit News, and you touched on a little bit about the opening number of the Detroit Jazz Festival this year, which centered around the theme of fighting for equality. In the year that we're in, with the experiences we've seen throughout the country, including in the Metro Detroit area, and even with the history of jazz being so heavily influenced by Black Americans, by people of color in America and all throughout the world, how important was it to incorporate that theme artistically, either as a way to reach people in a different way and help them understand what's being fought for on a national level through a different lens, and also to just continue to raise awareness, especially in the city of Detroit and in the metro area, for this fight for equality?
Yes, indeed, a very serious and ongoing issue. In fact, when Representative Lewis passed, I took some time, as I often try to do when I can, to get to know the person better. I read his speeches and some of his writing, and really gained a perspective on who he was, the beauty of who he was, that he was, he was someone that was a representative of civil rights from the earliest days, who suffered for it, and yet found a way to work through the system, to become part of the system, and to make changes from within. And also always preaching the idea of carrying a message with with love, carrying the message with a spirit that is not a violent spirit, but one that gets the message across and makes changes happen. That being said, decades after the civil rights movement began, he was still saying some of the same things that had not moved, the needle had not moved on some things in many ways. So that was a real inspiration. I will say, jazz music is a Black music. I mean, the basis of jazz is African traditional rhythms and concepts. Those were distilled through the Latin countries and eventually came up to southern United States in New Orleans and some other places, and it became the basis of not only jazz but of course all American music. So the Detroit Jazz Festival Foundation, we made statements about the Black Lives Matter movement and things on our media, social media and website. But I took my time with that because I wanted to make it clear, we weren't doing it because we felt, we had just a need to do that to make a statement, but we had a responsibility because so much of the music that we love and support and our mission carries forward in education and performance is about that population and that search, that quest for true equality, true inclusion, and diversity. Many of our programs, our open submission programs, our educational programs, they seek to make these things available to everyone. So, after the earlier stages of all this, I wanted to make sure we did and will continue to do some very specific things that continue to support the concept, move it forward, speak to it, speak of it, bring in different perspectives about it. So it's not just a statement on our webpage, but it is clearly us rising to the responsibility that we need to meet. And justice was exactly that, a musical representation from different perspectives of this important subject, and an encouragement to all jazz artists to compose music that captures this, put it in your repertoire, keep the conversation going through your artistry, through what you can represent. And that was a very important part, not only of who we were this year, but who we always are and who we always will be.
Chris Collins with us. He is the president and artistic director of the Detroit Jazz Festival with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Chris, with everything that was experienced in the planning and execution of the 41st annual Detroit Jazz Festival in 2021, should COVID-19 not continue to be taking the toll that it is on the United States and on the state of Michigan, should we be able to get back to some sense of normalcy in the next year, how will the Detroit Jazz Festival's 42nd annual show be impacted by the 41st annual show? What will be incorporated from what you did this year, possibly going forward in the future in festivals, both in the 42nd and years beyond that?
Yes, indeed. I mean, again, we were incredibly blessed that our amazing corporate sponsors, our presenting sponsor, Rocket Mortgage, and many others, and our donors, individual donors, dug their heels in with us and knew this was an important year to stay with us and make this happen. I mean, that is essential, and we will continue to work to celebrate that piece of who we are and how we're able to do what we do. These people are intrinsic parts of the community, and art, all art, music, art, dance, visual arts, they all require that philanthropic support to thrive without the pressures of commercialism dictating their direction, so they can grow and thrive and evolve. So that's an important piece. I will say that we all, as I said earlier, have to look to what we've learned in this year and potentially think about how to use these new tools, these new crafts, these new infrastructures that we've created to expand in new directions, to reach new audiences, new generations, new demographics around the world. How do we approach that? How do we look to where we might not be meeting the need or the interest of certain demographics? For us, we have a Latino jazz outreach program because we noticed in some of our statistical analysis a few years ago that the number of Latinos at our events was low, and we wanted to address that. So we have a number of programs in place to do that. I mean, these are the kind of thoughts that come up when suddenly you have a global audience you can reach. That being said, then there's nothing that replaces great music face to face, and there's no way that will ever be replaced, but it can be enhanced, and the delivery of live music to either someone too far away to be here in person, or someone who, because of a physical disability, can't leave their home. All of these are places that we can now reach in sophisticated ways. And we can, as I said, we raise the bar on audio and video in order to establish a representation of how wonderful a broadcast music event can be. It can be live, it can be extensive, 12 hours a day, and with the right people and the right format and the right team, it can be pulled off with aplomb. And so all of these things will play into the future. I would say we're all anxious to get back to face, but without a doubt, it has to be guided by data. We're still working with health professionals and watching data and helping to understand there's a lot of things we don't know. We all are optimistic that there will be changes in the near future. But for us, our year-round programming, which has already started, this week alone, Wednesday through Saturday, we have a American Standards 2, A Taste of Havana. It's an all-star Detroit group at the Dirty Dog Jazz Cafe. We'll actually be streaming live on Saturday, the 24th, and I believe it's all the first set. The 6:45 set is also simulcast on WDET. These things are taking place. We're doing educational programs and everything. We are now, though, planning everything to be virtual at this point, and watching for those opportunities where we might expand into a smaller audience, like at the club. It is a 50% audience, and when that can open up and when we can have other dimensions. But for sure, at this point, we're still in the world of COVID-19. We're still in the world of protecting patrons and artists. Specific safety protocols have to be kept intact, and very likely moving forward, the world is going to be more sensitive to physical contact and the kind of protocols that we should all put into place to protect us all as individuals, as families, as communities, and as a global group of human beings that need to be very sensitive to the fact that these viruses are here to stay and will only continue to evolve and be around. So with all that in mind, I think new formats are in order, new thoughts, new energies, new creativity in those directions, and I think you're going to see the fruits of that as we move forward, hopefully into a year, hopefully by spring, summer, where we're all attending those wonderful concert events that we love so much. But if not, there's a good reason, and there's ways to do it that will be valuable for all of us and something that will be memorable for the world.
Chris Collins with us, the president and artistic director of the Detroit Jazz Festival. Chris, just another couple of minutes with you before we have to say goodbye. Is there anything else that would be important for our audience to know from the Detroit Jazz Festival, or any other information that you would like our audience to know before we let you go today?
Sure. Well, DetroitJazzFest.org, DetroitJazzFest.org. That's our website. We also have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter accounts. You can find us there. We always give a shout out to our angel of jazz, the great Miss Gretchen Valade, who saved the festival some years ago and was behind the creation and the propagation of the Detroit Jazz Festival Foundation, along with incredible, as I said, incredible sponsors from our presenting sponsor, Rocket Mortgage and Carhartt and Absolpure and JP Morgan Chase and DTE Foundation, it goes on and on, along with our incredible independent donors. In fact, if you want to donate to the Detroit Jazz Festival, please go onto the website, hit that donate button, and you can be a part of the largest free jazz festival and year-round educational and performance jazz initiative emanating right here from our city of Detroit. I hope you take advantage of it. Keep our sponsors in mind; they make it happen. And keep in mind our great angel of jazz, Gretchen Valade, who is looking over the entire jazz world and all of us, and making it special and growing Detroit's reputation for modern jazz. It's very special stuff.
Well, Chris, thank you very much for being with us today. We appreciate having you on.
My pleasure, Tyler. Thank you.